Welcome back. Markets are just opening and will be lower here today after American inflation came in overnight lower, but still above 8%. Our business editor, Ross Greenwood, joins me now. And Ross, what does this say, if anything, about Australia's inflation or interest rates?
Well, it says everything about it, because the things that were going up fastest in America are the things that are rising in Australia here. And so you're almost getting a glimpse of what it might be like here in about 3 or 4 months' time. And it means also that there's going to be increasing pressure on the Reserve Bank to raise interest rates even faster than what many might have anticipated. But I can tell you the response on the markets has been immediate. So our market today has already lost another 1.2%, about 82 points. The Australian dollar has fallen. It's currently sitting around 69.1 US cents. Here's the US inflation. So it was down just a touch from March, 8.5%. It's dropped to April, 8.3%. But as I say, it's the things that are rising in price that are actually really important to watch right now. So if we go through the fastest price rises, petrol in the past year up 43% in America. It's going to be a similar story here. Energy, in other words, gas for houses, up by 30%. Used cars. Now, the story is very similar, especially after the floods. 35,000 insurance claims for damaged and destroyed cars is going to put enormous pressure not just on new car prices, but used car prices here in Australia. But on top of that, there's things like electricity in the United States, up 11% in the past year. Food prices there affect everybody. Just the same story here, up 9.4%. But I want to show you something else that will surprise and affect people as well. And this is going to also impact us here in Australia. And that's this. Have a look at airline prices. In the past month, they've risen almost 20%. That's the fastest 1 month rise in America on record. But on top of that, it's not just, if you like, things like food and electricity, petrol, kind of things you imagine. It's now creeping into the services industry. So in other words, this is about rents rising. This is the price of lawyers, the price of accountants rising. So, you know, from that point of view, Laura, this is where it starts to show that this inflation is not coming in from overseas. It's actually coming also as a result of so much money post the recession induced by COVID that is now sloshing around the economies of the Western world.
Yep, certainly happening here as well after JobKeeper. Can I just quickly ask you a question about the price of airline tickets, 18.6%. What did you say that was down to? Is this a whole range of factors just going into that, or is it mostly jet fuel?
OK, jet fuel is going to be the main one, but that's the key one. But the second thing is demand, right? So as a result, remember that the airlines took a whole bunch of capacity out. That's what's happened here in Australia. Then you've got labour, so the price of actual workers. So the shortage of airline workers, we can see that here in Australia. The long queues at our airports show that there's a lack of workers to process the people coming through. So given the fact that you've got demand, higher fuel prices, higher wages, what does that lead to? Higher airline prices. And if you've got a lack of capacity, a lack of flights in the air, a lack of seats, if you like, well, that ultimately means that you're going to get higher prices, in particular for international flights. But there's no doubt that that's true of the domestic fares as well, with really, I guess, only the competition between the various airlines keeping those prices under some sort of control. But look, I'll tell you one other thing on the food issue. Joe Biden, the US president, he spoke to farmers last night talking about the impact of inflation, but also the importance of those farmers to make certain that there's enough food, not just for Americans, but also for the world. Here he is.
I stand here today to thank American farmers who are the breadbasket of democracy. You really are. You know, we talk about, you know, every investment banker could leave their job. If every farmer left, we'd all starve to death. You know, let's talk about what's important. All these jobs are important. But I just think about it. Right now, America's fighting on two fronts. At home, it's inflation and rising prices. Abroad, it's helping Ukrainians defend their democracy and feeding those who are left hungry around the world because Russian atrocities exist.
I think politicians have somehow fallen into the trap, Ross, of thinking we're somehow different and can avoid this. The RBA put that to bed last week, saying that inflation would be at 6% this year and would stay there for quite some time. But what is happening in Australia with food? We see, you know, lettuce, iceberg lettuce at $5. Blueberries can be up to $18 a punnet at the moment, but we're dumping avocados. So it's not an even playing field, is it?
Well, you know, it's affected by a range of seasonal things. Floods can affect it. It can also be affected by just simply the growing season. And so from that point of view, there are going to be some things in, if there's any, you know, the obvious advice is eat what's in season, because that's the thing that's always going to be the cheapest. But if you're trying to, you know, sort of eat out of season, as it were, the prices are always going to be higher for you. And remember here, this is a really important point, that every individual, every family, every business has its own individual inflation rate. Some more, some less. But from the business point of view, and therefore from the employment point of view, because the one thing keeping Australia going right now is that every person has a job. And as soon as they start to lose those jobs, that's when really the wheels fall off the economy, the banks and everything else. So an important aspect of this right now is for people to maintain those jobs, and really for the businesses not be under so much pressure that they have to start considering putting those workers off.